Good morning, guten Morgen for this press briefing of the S&D Group. I welcome our Group President Udo Buhlmann and leave him the floor.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Nice meeting you again here in Strasbourg, as always. It's a standard to say welcome to an exciting week, and most probably I can use that until the end of the mandate. So in this case as well, you have seen that we already have decided on Monday on a very ambitious agenda. Everything is a bit, also in our group, but also especially in the PPE, overshadowed by the ongoing processes of the selection of the lead candidate. I can proudly announce that our process has started yesterday. Call for interest has started 1st of October, will go until the 18th of October. Then we will finally, Socialists and Democrats, PSE family, will gather in Lisbon 7th and 8th of December to have the final say on the picture. I got to know that today also it's an interesting day of the PPE, with Alexander Stubb declaring his interest. So Manfred Weber will not be the only one, not to speak about those who are still waiting, like perhaps Michel Barnier or others. So again, we have interesting times. What I did last week, because I wanted to raise the voice of our group, parliamentary group, the S&D also, I addressed the progressive leaders of our family to take action and to be ready for a radical policy change, because only with a radical policy change we can revitalize the European Union, meet again and again newly the expectations of our citizens and serve their basic interests. Therefore, you have also received today a copy of my letter to the progressive leaders, in which I ask for a new approach, a fresh approach, a bold approach on the lines of our group. You got to know also during the last months already that we are more and more renovating our political program towards a future-oriented approach. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals 2030 serve us as a compass for a holistic progressive development. If you have questions on that, I will be happy to go into details. What is of importance for Europe and even more for international relations is, of course, as very often in history, development on the Balkans. We saw the Macedonian referendum with a turnout that was not high enough to meet the indicated threshold, but on the other hand, we saw an overwhelming majority saying yes to the agreement, and we would like to call on the opposition parties in Macedonia to finally stop their boycott and their aggression against the deal, which could be able to pacify not only the Balkans, but open for the next generation in North Macedonia the perspectives not only to live in peace as a member of NATO, but also to become a full member of the European Union. I think the people deserve that, and it should not be short-minded party politics that come in their way. Third issue I would like to point out to, I'm coming from the debate on the European Council with the Austrian presidency. My group is disappointed by what the presidency delivered so far. We are unhappy that there was no progress in Salzburg. We are unhappy that obviously the Austrian presidency is blocking again and again the asylum package that was received with a huge majority here in the House. Even worse, they tried to unpack it, and my appeal today in my speech in the plenary was that the minister present in the plenary should talk to Strache and to talk to Kurz and tell them that the European parliamentarians do not accept if they are further split the European Union, if they are doing the opposite what they promised for to be a bridge builder. No, so far they are not bridge builders. They are working on the policy of fear, where we need the constructive approach of a policy of hope. These are my main points for my introductory remarks, and now, of course, I'm happy to receive comments and questions from your side.
Thank you, Udo Buhlmann. Are there any questions from your side? Yes, David, please.
Thank you. David Carretta, Radio Radicale, Italian Radio. I know that it's not on the formal agenda of the European Parliament, but it's on the political agenda of the European Union, or the Eurozone. Very simple question. Is Italy the new Greece?
You couldn't do it shorter, Annie. No, because I think this is not a question so much about economy. This is a question, what is going on in Italy, for me, more or less a question of politics. In Greece, you had seen that we got into a critical development as a result of the worldwide financial crisis, when markets were getting crazy and were hitting especially on the weaker economies. And as a result of that, you had spreads, enormous spreads in Greece, in Portugal, and elsewhere. In these days, also in Italy, and it was dearly necessary for the European Union to develop a policy in which stabilization functions would be introduced to defend the Eurozone. So that was one thing. As a result of this major financial crisis, you had to enter into new schemes of mutual support. You know our criticism on the Troika policies, where we were unsatisfied with methodology as well as with content. But Greece, meanwhile, went through that and happily could leave the last support program. I think the situation in Italy is completely different. I think the governing coalition does everything to organize a conflict. They are investing in conflict with the European institutions. And for me, that has not to do so much with economy. That has to do with the attempt to tell a story which protects them from proper delivery back home. What they cannot match is the contradictions in their political programs. On the one side, Cinque Stelle had promised to do something on minimum income. On the other side, Salvini has promised to introduce the flat tax. Both at the same time is a question of mathematics, not too easy. But by provoking third parties, for instance, the European institutions, you can hide only for a while. But for me, this is a political attempt to hide and not to solve a problem.
Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres questions? Mehr Fragen?
Any further questions, please?
Indicate your name and medium. Merci.
Bonjour, Marion Fontana pour...
Good morning, Marion Fontana from Agents Europe. I have a question on the document you sent out to progressive leaders. This call is the idea to distinguish yourself from the call sent out by Emmanuel Macron, or quite the opposite when you're talking about building alliances? Are you looking to build an alliance with République En Marche, and have you received any reactions to this call that you sent out so far? Thank you.
First of all, I address myself to our social democratic leaders in the progressive family. These are my addressees. And here I am talking about a policy style, here I am talking about political content and reconnecting with our voters as a necessity to have a successful campaign. If you ask me, which is behind your question, how do you relate to potential allies or competitors, I take this question as the deeper question behind your introductory remarks. I would say the following. Rightly, many colleagues of yours point out to the danger of right-wing populists, of fascists, of right-wing extremists occupying the scene on national level. And these are our enemies, number one. These are those we are going to fight fiercely because they want to deconstruct the European project, and we will win because we are the many. They may have money, but we are on the side of the people. So this will be this attempt, perhaps also sponsored by unfriendly forces outside the European Union, will be rejected. Will be rejected. Having said that, we have nonetheless to question ourselves, how come that in more than one country, ordinary people fall victim to right-wing populists. Ordinary people who are disappointed, who would like to see the European Union being more proactive in the policies for their families, in the policies for the future of their children, in the protection at the workplace, safeguarding social rights, safeguarding labor rights. And here we cannot criticize those people because we ourselves, socialists and Democrats, are disappointed. We say to the Commission, we say to the Council, you did not deliver. This Europe has not sufficiently delivered for ordinary people. And if it would have delivered for ordinary people in the right way, we wouldn't see the same amount of right-wing populists, that's for sure. And here we also, in Germany and elsewhere, have historical lessons where we learned from. Insofar, I have to say, if people go to the election campaign only with the happy flags, blue and yellow, waving for the European institutions without analyzing what happened during the last years, if we only see this happy pro-European family talking about institutions with no interest in talking about social and economic developments, then I have to say to those people, perhaps you are part of the problem, because you have not seen in what extent your policies of administrating the status quo and not reforming the European Union basically has also been one of the problems that led us to more and more disappointment in our citizenships. So this is my competitor and not ex ante my ally, as long as, and this is a direct question to Mr. Macron, I already raised to him vis-à-vis in the plenary, he is at the crossroads, not me, not we, because we know where we come from and we know as a family where to go to, but Emmanuel Macron is totally free to decide whether he is a partner, which we would welcome, in social reforms to the better, in new ecological projects to the better in the European Union, or whether he is somebody administrating the status quo with happy headlines for a better Europe, only for institutions but not for the people. And this is a question to him.
Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres questions? Oui.
Any other questions, please?
Oui, Monsieur le Président, concernant...
Well, yes, President, on the Mureşen report, assistance for Turkey, what's your group's position there? And then a further question, if I may, related to the first one. On this subject, again, assistance to Turkey. And there, the speaker pauses.
To listen, please.
La deuxième question?
The second question, sorry about that. Could we have a microphone? So, what's Germany's position on that subject? You're not Mrs. Merkel, of course, but what's Germany's position on assistance to Turkey and the fact that pre-accession assistance for Turkey is being stopped? Thank you.
Well, in general, you know the line of my group. We say we have open hands for the people of Turkey if in Turkey a decision is made towards democracy and liberty and for the values of the European Union. This is not what we could see in the last couple of years. This is not what we could see in the last months. When we have concrete projects with Turkey, we are watching out that financial subsidies, for instance, are directly supporting refugees and not Turkish actors or Turkish institutions. So this is our clear will to help refugees in Turkey, but we cannot support the policy of Mr. Erdogan. He tried, you saw that in Germany, he tried to overcome controversies of the past by his visit recently. But as you found also in the comments of the German newspapers and your colleagues from journalists, you could see that these meetings were not too happy. And you could see the faces of Madame Merkel and the other German political actors. They were at the limits of diplomacy, at the limits of diplomacy, let me put it like that. So happiness looks different. And of course, Germany, my country, in the Grand Coalition, as well as we in the Socialists and Democrats group, are not supportive to the anti-liberal cause against minorities, against civic freedoms that is Erdogan adopting back home.
There was another question back there. Yes.
Ja, Thomas Friedrich, wenn wir schon mal bei dem Thema Türkei.
Well, we're on Turkey. So given that, I'll ask a question on it. What do you think about the Turkish president's appearance in Germany, Berlin, and in particular at the mosque in Cologne, and which consequences will be drawn from that appearance at the European level?
Herr Friedrich, ich darf im Deutschen antworten.
I'll answer in German. Mr. Friedrich, I have a question for you. I mean, what surprised you with regard to Mr. Erdogan's appearance? What was new in that? What haven't we seen before? What was unexpected? The way that he tries to get people of Turkish origin living and working in Germany to support him. I mean, that's part of his agenda, isn't it? And that clearly can't be accepted by us. But the next question that arises, of course, is the question relating to the World Cup in the summer. I'm not speaking as a football fan there. I think everyone knows what I'm talking about there. Because this controversy has now made its way as far as sport, and that's unfortunate. I think it was very poorly handled by those responsible, but I think we have to wonder how it's possible for support in Germany and other countries for Erdogan to exist. I mean, why does he get so much support from Germans with Turkish roots or Turks living in Germany? Because that's not obvious. I mean, I can understand that there are people with Turkish roots who have come to Germany or born in Germany. Well, I'd imagine that they would have a very different attitude. They've grown up with the values of the European Union. In my local office in Frankfurt, I had a couple of employees, a young man who grew up in Germany, but he had Turkish roots, and another one who came to Germany as a Turkish national, and they worked very, very hard, and they really stuck to European values to a much greater extent, actually, than many other Germans. So I think we have to wonder what we have done wrong for that to happen. Other countries have to ask the same questions. So why is there this kind of bunker mentality among these people, so that they look for support from Erdogan? Perhaps they don't feel like equals in our society. There are a lot of in-depth discussions on our societies that need to be held so that we can deal with this issue, I think.
Wishing you all a good week, and if there are further questions, we can take them outside. Merci.